Hello and welcome to another episode of AI Ranch, where we see how AI affects the businesses and people around the world. And today I'm very happy to introduce Janis Kreilis, who I met in USA, in Silicon Valley, where we went with the national delegation and we visited VC funds, companies, all sorts of enterprises. And he's a founder of the company Hyperscan,
Exactly.
Also the founder of AI Academy, and where he teaches how people can apply AI to the theoretical to practical skills. He also studied in America, in Columbia University of Pennsylvania, and has really interesting background. I think will be interesting for our listeners. He comes from the oil energy sector, HR, and now AI.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks. I also appreciate that.
Yeah, so tell about your story a little bit, your background. Like, how did you end up in America? All right, then, because we are right now here in the Eastern Europe. Also, like, what is about this energy sector, about the HR, about AI? Why did you went in these fields?
Yeah, it's actually really funny because I did land in recruitment at some point, right? And then my joke about myself is that if I received my own resume, I would not hire myself. This guy is all over the place, right? So, but yeah, it was funny. Like, I grew up in Riga. I graduated here from the Riga State First Gymnasium from the International Baccalaureate, and back then I basically knew I want to go and study abroad, and I had two options, either to go to the UK or to the US. And with the UK, the issue was that, well, the tuition was much lower, but I couldn't, there's no way we could afford like the living cost there. You know, it was like, 2000s.
I went to the UK.
Good for you.
I went directly after the high school and bachelor's to Wales.
Nice.
So it was about 2007 or so. But yeah, they're like the living costs back then was not so bad as today, but
yeah, it's
still
even worse now. But yeah, I come from a working class background, so like my parents were basically like, "Hey, I can't really do much for you." So basically, the US was the only option because if I could get a scholarship there, then it would cover everything, and that's what I did. And I got into UPenn. Back then, I thought I would be a diplomat. So my actual first bachelor's sort of professional training, if you want to call it, or education is in international relations. So that's more about politics, economy, and so on. But then sort of throughout, we graduated. It was like 2011, right? We were still very much in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and I understood that going to work in the public sector back then would be quite difficult, right? Like salaries were low, there were no open positions. So the jump into the oil and gas space was kind of opportunistic because there was this cool job opportunity, sort of like go live abroad for 6 months at a time, move from a country to country, explore the oil and gas economies.
You had to move to different countries?
I did, yeah. It was really funny.
What countries have you been?
So our main office was based in Istanbul and Dubai, but I was not really based there much. I covered Brunei, then Ghana, Nigeria, Qatar, and Nigeria again.
You went to all those countries?
Yeah, so it was basically like 4 to 6 months in every project. Then we lived there locally.
What did you have to do?
We interviewed about 150 to 200 people, like the leaders of the space. So private and public sector, all sorts of companies, from the oil giants to like oil service companies, like, I don't know, all sorts of projects, right, and companies. So, and then after that, we produced this big report about what is happening in this year in this sort of from an investor's perspective, and gathered lots of maps and data and so on. So it was super fun.
But you already started working with people at that time, right?
Yeah.
Because the HR right now in that direction.
Yeah,
so
it's like
it is something there.
I think actually
making reports, analyzing.
I really think the entrepreneurship vibe that's where I caught it, because it was entrepreneurial in the sense that you had a small team. In some countries, you were not well known, so you had to just kind of open the doors and learn to kind of sell the idea that you're making, and you were responsible for what's going to happen, right, in terms of the sales outcomes and the actual report. So, yeah, it was kind of like you're on your own. Of course, you would get like support from the main office, but Yeah, so it was a great experience. But yeah, it was kind of random. So, but then I always knew that I wanted to make it back to Latvia eventually. And I also wanted to make it back to the States, at least for one more stint. So that's why after 3 years, I went back to the US. And I understood that oil and gas, it's not a big theme in Latvia. So I would probably want to transition somewhere towards energy in general. And I got a master's at Columbia in energy management and policy. So it's kind of a segue from energy, from oil and gas into energy and private sector, right? Just entrepreneurship and business. Took a great course also at the Columbia Business School, launching new ventures, great professors too, where we actually took a startup idea and like kind of developed it over a course of semester. And I think in my second year, when I was like, okay, I'm coming back to Latvia, I realized that I didn't really want to do anything else, but actually found my own company. So that was like the crucial idea. Like, okay, 2016, I come back and I'm like, I want to found something. How I got into HR, it was like another random opportunistic moment because while I was here and figuring out what to do, I started organizing these meetups with some other friends called With Global Experience in Latvia. So getting people together like myself who had been abroad and come back because it was very opportune moment for that. And that thing exploded into an NGO. So in 6 months, I find myself leading an actual, kind of the board chair of an NGO. Not an NGO type per se, but it was a great thing, right? So it's just kind of, and that actually taught me about like a concept like the product market fit.
Right.
Like this concept had definitely like a fit and a need for like what we're doing. And then as I was still kind of doing this on the side and enjoying myself, but still looking for ideas, a lot of companies started coming to our meetups and saying, hey, you have this network. Like, are they looking for jobs? Because back then, Latvia was like in really, like the unemployment rate was super low. And the demand for, people like that was really high. And I was like, wait a minute. Well, there's like companies asking for people, right? And there's like people we know. That sounds like a business to me, right?
Okay.
So then we founded Yormu, which was a social enterprise, but the idea, was to connect the best companies of Latvia with global talent, primarily people who are returning migrants, but also just other good people, right? And that was my first foray into recruitment, and I actually really started to enjoy myself there. The business grew, I don't know, I think we were completely bootstrapped. We grew like 100% a year for the first 2 years, and then COVID came. And in COVID, it was very difficult. Like, everybody basically stopped hiring at once, right? So, and back then it was this moment, like how I got into recruitment tech was just realizing that as a newcomer, I had still had a fresh look at the space, but at the same time, I knew what were the best practices, so to speak. And a lot of things didn't make sense. Like we saw a lot of outdated processes, a lot of sort of,
Did you felt some pushback from the established HR agencies? Like did I assume that if you did growth like 100% year over year, they noticed you, right? Or wasn't it as a big?
I think, obviously it was from a low base, right? It was like, you grow from like a headcount of 100 to 200, right? But we're a small team. But I think for what we did, we actually did make a mark and kind of became a well-known name. And my take is that a lot of the established ones, I don't think they really saw us much as a competitor, because we were, first off, we're a social enterprise. We kind of were publicly always about that. We had a very specific goal. So it was kind of like, oh, these guys are doing some sort of a niche thing, So I don't think anybody was like really threatened by us. Plus, to be honest, I don't think we grew to the point where people will be like, oh, wow, they're like taking over the market.
But you learn the HR processes, right?
Yeah, especially recruitment or talent acquisition.
Yeah, and they were willing to pay you, so you did something right.
Yes, exactly. But I just that was a great experience. Again, coming into a new space with no prior knowledge, and I remember thinking, when I first read some of the contracts that we had to sign, I was like, why is this so complicated? Why are all these clauses here? And then, after a year of stepping over random rakes and like glitches in the process and whatnot, you're like, oh, now I understand why.
Yeah.
There are things that might not go to plan. You didn't even think about them. So it's like, yeah, this kind of a newcomer
Well, you
attitude.
said you worked with the best companies of the region here. What were some of the names you worked with?
Ooh, one of our best customer was actually Every, before it was merged with Tieto. Circle K, for example, that was kind of one line of business where we helped them bring Scandinavian language speakers, because that's like the service business here that they do. Yeah, some startups, obviously. So yeah, it's difficult to kind of recall now, but yeah.
Okay. So then moving forward, what were some of the key takeaways from this period? Like you as an entrepreneur, like what did you learn to what you'd bring in this new business you're doing now?
So yeah, coming like one lesson definitely, coming into a new space with no prior knowledge is not easy. so these days, when you're doing like B2B SaaS, I'm sort of thinking like there are spaces that I really know, and I know the products I'm building, like that I would use myself.
Yep.
And I know that, hey, if you wanted to move in a completely different direction, that would take way longer because I know there are things I don't know. Back then, I guess it was just, I was younger, a bit more naive than, hey, how difficult can this be, right? On the other side, what I like about this, though, is I did see that, yeah, this kind of a bit of an outsider's view does help, but it only starts to emerge when you've learned the best practices, and then you can take a look at from the outside, right? Because otherwise, like you're like, oh, why are they doing this? It's all stupid. But then in 2 years, you're like, oh, I realize why. And here's my solution, right? So it's not like you can just come in and be like, oh, you guys don't understand anything.
Yeah, I think like this is some common theme with many entrepreneurs, this pink glass effect. Like you would not do anything so like if you understood how painful and difficult it is.
Exactly.
But this helps to get over this first step. It's like having a marriage basically. It's basically the same thing. The pink glasses, and then later comes the work. But then there are the results. So now you are at the stage where, would you say you've found so again, as you said before, some market fit, right? For something that you believe will be important, the hyperscan. Can you explain that? What problem you solved there?
Yeah, so hyperscan came after a pivot, but it's basically solving one of the issues in recruitment, specifically in direct outbound, but also for the CV scanning or resume scanning. The fact is, if you're looking for people online, right, it's basically unstructured data. And try as you might on LinkedIn, you will always have nearly always, too many people on your search or way too few. Because we are looking for very specific parameters, and we have to translate those into keyword searches, right? Which are not, always as functional as you would think. So what we built is a tool that can take your entire LinkedIn search results. You can ask any kind of yes or no questions. So custom filters, basically, like has this person worked in a sales leadership role for 5 years in Germany, right? And the AI scans everybody's profile. We enrich their profiles with all the associated company information. So for example, if I were to scan myself, you would get my profile and also the page of Hyperscan injected into it, so that the large language model has access to this like really big data set. And by that, we get a nice table where we can filter people out to say like, okay, what are the markers? Like, okay, I'm going to pick this filter, this filter, this filter. And instantly I get, I basically clean up the noise from the search. So it speeds up the process. And vice versa, right now, we're about to release a feature where we start bringing this to the market, and some companies are saying, great, of course, sourcing is a problem. But our bigger problem is we're getting 2,000 resumes per applicant, like for every job that we post. So can you help us with that? So we're doing the same thing for resumes now, that you can set up your own very specific filters, and out comes like a nice ordered
Is it just based on this HR department's requirements? These questions, like I understand, this is yes or no questions feeded into the zero-shot way to the language model, probably.
Yeah.
But this is based just on that, or you're trying to also add your own experience of the HR, right? Maybe you can. Are you like enriching this process in the way that you get better results by adding your own experience to this process, or not yet?
To an extent, because a lot of how you ask things, like the questions themselves, actually matter. So when we onboard our users, we give them a crash course almost in like what things you can ask, how the system works. There's like also a question bank of examples of great questions that have worked before. So that's one. And of course, in the back end, the prompting itself is we've kind of like assembled and given specific instructions of how to analyze the profiles. So yes. So on this level, I think we are thinking about like other ways to expand this, like giving an option to give more precise instructions, moving from like zero shot to sort of multiple
because
shot.
like if it's just like prompt engineering, right? Like if you know the prompt, anyone can do it, right? But you have this experience already, so this probably you can do more of that, right?
That's the idea, actually. So we are doing the development of Hyperscan is very lean, I would say. We started with a prototype that was built in Google Sheets, just to test the concept, right? And test whether the market would love the concept. Hey, you can do this now. Like, you want to sign up? And we actually got really good feedback on this. Then we built this with a more like, I would not call it basic, because a lot of like testing and engineering has gone into getting the the percentage of accuracy up. But of course, we know we can push it further with like introducing layers of cognitive architecture. Right?
How do you measure accuracy for checking the resumes and profiles?
Yeah, so there's a crucial thing. What Hyperscan doesn't do, we're not saying, okay, this person is a fit or not a fit, like the person, right? What we're doing is we're measuring every question and answer pair. So if I ask the model whether you have worked in sales for 7 years, there is usually, if it's a good question, there's an objective truth. So we have a sample of our own profiles that we basically... Validation set, exactly. And we just kind of check like, okay, we asked this model this kind of question. Did it get everything right?
But there could be like infinite amount of questions you could ask. Like
sure, but theoretically it's infinite, but in practical matters, like it's kind of like finite. I would say like finite, because the recruiters will not ask random questions. You kind of we already have like thousands of questions asked, so we can actually, we've used AI also internally to like analyze them and get sort of the templated questions. So we know like, okay, these are definitely something we need to cover like 90% of the time. And these are like, this is exotic, cool, but let's leave it for a bit later, right? Like we'll just check the accuracy, but we won't have like a big sort of testing set. So.
And can you share like some stories how the recruiters are actually using the tool? Like, is it like how much it is speeding up their job or giving results, like some practical great finds or fits that they can do?
I can actually share a very an extreme example, perhaps, with Mikos from Giraffe 360, right? So the story is like he comes to us and he's like, "Hey guys, I need a head of product." With 2 experiences in game design and physical building architecture. So you can probably imagine like that Venn diagram, like the overlap is very narrow. And without AI, I don't even know like how you would even find something like this. So what we did actually is we ended up scanning 10,000 profiles in Scandinavia and London. We asked AI for these specific things. So, we have like 4 columns. I would ask questions several ways, right? So you have like markers. And out of those 10,000, about 50 people were actually fit on both criteria. Then, that's the first step. Then you go through 50 profiles, right? That's not 10,000. So that saves, I don't know, like a lot of time. We haven't even calculated. And out of those 50, Mikos ended up inviting, I think, about 5 or 10 to interviews. Can't remember exactly. And he actually made a great hire.
Well, that's great. For those of you who don't know, the Giraffe 360 is one of the very successful companies here in the region. They raised, I think, a 16 million round recently. They're doing, I think, over 10 million revenues a year or something like that. So they're growing very fast, rapidly. So if you need like interior like what is the real estate?
Yeah, exactly. Like virtual spaces and tours.
and also the floor plans and like everything related to real estate listings that they do really great job with
they're a great
AI.
company. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's an extreme example, right? Like
Okay.
10,000 people, like this little needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
There are more mundane ones. Like, for example, with one company, they were looking for actually Aarons. That
They also are
it's
good.
also a local one, right? Yeah, but one of the better like Latvian startups, I would say, or scale-ups. And so their need, we're still in sort of moving from a trial phase where we completed the demos and the trials. And so, for example, they were looking for somebody who had done any experience with the German market as a project manager for that market, right? And if you think about it, right, like having some experience with customers in a German market can mean several things. So one is, they have exports experience. They have worked in Germany or in German-speaking market. They have worked with a German-speaking market from here, right? They've studied in Germany. So there's several ways to say, like,
It's
get the
not
signal,
just one question.
right? Exactly. So we actually set up these 5 questions, scanned a bunch of, I think, about 500 project managers. And it was very easy. It's like, okay, these people have specifically worked with the German market from Riga. Okay, cool. There's like 5. Nice. Then there's like 20 that have worked in Austria, Germany, Switzerland. Great. Next. So it's kind of like a slice and dice way of getting the long list of unstructured data structured and in order, and again picking out the people that are worth looking at. So it's it's kind of a different take on how other companies are now trying to implement AI in the space, where we see a lot of sort of, here's the job description, here's the person's resume. Is this a fit? Oh, it's like a 78% match. What does that mean, right?
Okay.
So we're doing very specific things, right? We're being explicit of set up your criteria, and we will just structure the data for you, and then the person makes a decision. So
You tell about these very, very highly tailored samples. Do anyone can just sign up and use it themselves as well?
of course, yeah.
Right.
It's we have a free trial. It's it's super transparent, like
Right.
startup like pricing. You can sign
How
up on
much
the
it costs?
website. So the basic plan starts at $99 per month per user.
What you can get for that?
Everything except for the data enrichment. So on the basic plan or essentials, we don't enrich the company profiles. So that's like, if you don't want to ask something about, have you worked at an AI company, for example, like if that layer is not necessary, then you're good, right? There's no limits either. With the pro plan, you do get the enrichment, and also now the CV and resume scanning will come with that. And then the team plan covers collaboration. You can share the projects and work together. So
basically, if anyone from the traditional HR agencies would use your tool for 99 a month, that they could just like reduce significantly their job in some areas, right?
the time, yeah, we've heard. I remember the one of the recruiters, like he was a senior guy from Sweden. He was like, I think I could do the job of 5 people now. So
that's good.
that's the idea, right? Like we haven't yet measured the specifics, right, of how what the time savings are, but like it should be in the ballpark is for the sourcing part, right?
And so I assume like the searching profiles on LinkedIn, there is the LinkedIn Navigator, right? And so how do you defend yourself against LinkedIn just adding this as a feature in the like near future?
Oh, that's a good one, actually. The very honest answer is if they do, we can't really defend much right now, right?
Except you have your client already existing client databases experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something you could use as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's we have our intellectual property on how to actually get the accuracy up. We have client insights. We know what they ask, how they ask things to get in their mindset. So obviously all of this builds up. But it's like any other startup space, right? Like if a big company wants to build,
right, do the things. What about other sources? Like you started mentioning, you're starting looking at CVs.
CVs, exactly.
What other sources you see?
So we are thinking like one potential avenue for our future expansion is that companies have asked for, hey, but can you also add GitHub? Can you add company data that we just pull in, like let's say websites or so to analyze? Can we add LinkedIn posts? Can we add other social media? And we're saying that's not that difficult. Like conceptually, obviously it's engineering work, but we want to be this. Again, the structurizer, that tool that gives structure to unstructured data. So we're building now an internal prototype that we will soon start testing with external customers, that you could put in a long list of websites, and similarly to a way when a sales development rep, right, an SDR would go through one by one, checking manually, you can set up the same kind of table with, okay, like tell me, is this company exporting? How many products do they have? So to kind of qualify these leads using AI, and again, sort, get the noise out of that list, and your actual SDR might be able to focus on what needs to be done.
Okay.
So there are ideas for Hyperscan to be more horizontal than it is right now.
Right. So this ability to do these checklist type of due diligence, basically. So I think this is one direction which I see in many areas. You said you have the validation set. You have some criteria questions. So how accurate you are and how you can be sure that it's not biased in some way. The language model, the question,
Sure.
the way how the information is laid out, it could all lead to missing out on some part of the candidates.
That's true. I think when we started, the first is we have validation set question answer pairs for specific profiles. We've improved the prompting on the back end, right? This cognitive architecture, and we have moved. I think when we started, we were around like 70% accurate. Now we're around 94, I want to say.
How many questions and the profiles you have in the validation set?
Several hundred profiles and about 20 questions that typically change after every couple of months if we see that some other questions become more typical. So
I advise you not to change them, but always when you reach, let's say, 99%, just add the same amount of outliners. So you'll drop to the 50 and then go up again.
Just keep going. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
because
otherwise, if you change it, the previous one, so it might not work anymore.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. We haven't done too much of question changing, but every now and then we're like, oh, this actually starts trending, so we'll just maybe add like one or two to
I have
the set.
seen similar cases in many areas of the AI. For example, like if you have even large validation sets for, let's say, number plate recognition,
right.
and then you say, okay, I have 99% accuracy, then you start running in the real life, you get a lot of outliners, then you need to update your validation set, you drop down the accuracy, grow again.
Yeah, and like the work starts again, right?
It is not it is never finished. It is foolish to think, and maybe also the other entrepreneurs and companies wanting to use AI need to kind of grasp this, that the AI is like a human. It's never perfect. It's based on human data. So it is always improving. It's just acceptable accuracy, right?
That's what actually we have a lot of discussions with our users about this, that at 94%, you're getting a lot of value already, right? Like at 70 was when we started, like we actually did get feedback. It's like, I'm not too sure about this. By this point, it's like, yeah, there's an occasional error, but that's okay. I can live with this. What helps though is, as I said, we're not making a judgment about whether the person is a fit or not a fit. So it could be the case that, usually recruiters set up, 5 to 7 criteria. And even if the AI is wrong in one of them, there's still there'd probably still be plenty of other green flags that will incentivize them to look at that profile. So it's not like, okay, you're a fit, you're not a fit, right? And that's like the error rate is either yes or no.
Yeah.
This is like, I made a mistake in this criteria, but there's others that might want to, you might want to check out the person for. And this also reduces or minimizes the risk of bias, because we're asking factual questions and less making sort of again, overarching statements about the person as a whole, where, I've read enough studies to see that, you should maybe clean up the data so there's like less risk of like racial bias or like gender bias and so on. So that's kind of, yeah. And interestingly, what we've noticed is, you wouldn't be surprised, right? But there are questions, this is the average, right, to accuracy. There are questions where the AI gets it spot on, and then there are what we call the math questions, where it needs to calculate years and sort of make logical deductions. Those are maybe trailing a bit below 90%.
For sure.
Because,
but are you trying to use now this expensive 1.0 model?
We haven't tried 01, but yeah, exactly. But we are now comparing the 4.0 versus 4.0 mini to specifically address these kind of things. And
why are you not using 01? It's expensive, right?
It is quite expensive, actually. Since the every project for us means like a lot of tokens.
But you're aware of that there were these IQ tests that they gave O1, and all of the models are on the left side, right? Like about like 90, 80, whatever, and this is over 100 already, like on the really super intelligent side. So you should probably test if that actually solves some of these problems.
The plan is right now to finish the 4.0 and then have that as a next like sort of back-end testing to see like, okay, does this solve all of our problems? Because if it does, then it's basically a cost problem, right?
It is.
Not a product problem. But I've seen those charts where like, okay, the GPT models are here, that's the human, and then there's like, 01. So,
it is.
And especially not even the preview ones, but the actual 01, which I don't think we have access to yet, but I love to see where this is headed, actually.
This the way how they do it, it's they hide a little bit the way how they do it, but I think that for researchers it's kind of clear that the language models itself are not great at making actually decisions or analyzing really the situation. They are great of translating the human language into some symbolic representations, basically. And some of these representations have some ability, like it is inside the model also some ability to do decisions and analytics, but it's even better than when it converts what you ask into, let's say, Prolog or Python language and then execute it. As you see in GPT-4, they can do amazing things with spreadsheets, right? And they would not be able to do it if I just feed spreadsheet as a text. No way. So, this is where I believe this is something that is happening inside in this O1, and also. And of course, it's feeding back itself, but it's also doing the symbolic interpretations as well. And this is like in the near future, I think there will be very powerful decision-making machines, open source, which will be based on that same principle. So if you start building it something now, you will just later change the engine.
It's like a different brain now. But interestingly, I've also seen this what you're talking about, right? The internal reasoning that we think that it thinks like us, but it kind of doesn't. And the best example I read yesterday is a very simple text. What do you call it? Like a logical problem. Like there were like 3 apples, 7 pears, and 3 lemons. However, 2 of the pears were under the average size. How many fruits were there? And even the O1 would discount the 2 that are the below average size, because again, like, why was this mentioned? Right? So it's like for a human, it's super easy, right? But the models kind of are misled by that random fact that we throw in. So I love to see how these things are evolving. To see like, oh, this is amazing, but why is it so simple that you're still kind of failing? And I think yes, like once we get to now that we've kind of at least getting the idea of this, we should call like the cognitive closeness of like concepts of how it sort of translates human languages, right, into like the symbolic representations of what they are. I think that will be the big next step, is like getting the reasoning.
I'm coming from the computer science, as you might know. The symbolic representations, the morphological graphs, the logical graphs, everything, that's something that humans have studied for
Quite some time.
many years,
Yeah, exactly. It's not
hundreds
new,
of years,
yeah.
50 years, right? And there's even programming languages which are solely designed to solve logical problems only. So, and if you can translate any problem into that language, it'll just
Then
solve
yeah,
it.
so it's basically then
Yeah.
you're talking about this new concept of there's the brain and then it has tools, right? So
Yeah.
and it knows which tool to use, and it's like again cognitive architecture rather than just throw something at the model and hope they get something back. So
Yeah, this is this is still hot topic to research, and great that we're kind of like trying to as you say, like there was the saying, like land the plane while it's crashing,
yeah,
or
exactly. Like
right,
you
right.
build the wheels while it's
Yeah,
like
so just to yeah, build the plane while it's landing, right? So this is what we are actually all doing right now, and it's actually working. So
yeah,
we already have some wheels in the place.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you have this also really interesting insight, I think, which others do not have at all, is the effect of AI for the job positions. Like you're already working with the hundreds or maybe even thousands, right? So these companies so using Hyperscan.
I wouldn't go with thousands, yeah,
Right.
or like
Yeah,
still a young startup, but yeah.
you're growing rapidly. So would you see already some trends where some professions are in more demand than others, and do you see that AI is replacing some of them, and which are the ones in demand now and in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen, and where the searches are difficult, right? That's everything about machine learning, about robotics, sort of, you're getting into the deep weeds of it. And the issue for the recruiters is that, I think some recruiters have mastered maybe, what it means to have, to find a Kotlin developer, right? But once you get into that, that's like a whole different ballgame where you're like, the only way to tell whether this person is what I'm looking for is to read their scientific papers. So it's actually for recruiters, it's a bigger challenge, right? To kind of, because there's this tech gap between what the person is doing that I'm trying to find and what I actually understand what they're doing. So there's like, you need to keep learning. So that's like one issue, pointing to the fact that recruiters need to also like upgrade their game. The other problem is these kind of people are difficult to find. There's few of them. So we've even spoken like, was it with one company in the US that was doing robotics, and we're testing a Hyperscan with them. And what we heard from their team is, hey guys, I love the product, but my problem is a bit different. I kind of almost know everybody in the space in like the 300-mile radius. So yeah, you're getting the right people out of LinkedIn. My problem is like I need more people like that because I kind of know them already. So that's just to show that this big boom that's happening right now in everything related to machine learning, AI, and so on. I don't think we're getting enough specialists there, right?
Well, wait. So it seems from what you said in the robotics and very specialized programming roles, there are some missing specialists in those roles, or it's just like any AI related roles.
So let's say machine learning engineers, right? Software or hardware, those roles, I think we don't have enough people there. Like,
any or very specialized.
It would be difficult for me to like comment like super specific right on the spot because I would need like to kind of look into it.
Because I'm asking you this because you also are running AI Academy, which I want to talk about. So, and there's I think this kind of illusion of knowledge that people just try out, some of these AI tools, and they start to think that they are like AI specialists.
You don't get me started. Like, so what is prompt engineering, right?
Yeah, like expert prompt engineer, right?
Yeah.
Now you in the resume AI developer.
Well,
you have problems like that as well, right?
Okay, I think the world now that we have, when was that? ChatGPT was launched like 2 years ago, right? Something like that. I think we've finally gone over some sort of hype cycle where, people did say, oh, I'm a bit of a prompt engineer. It's like, no, you're just a very efficient communicator in human language. Good for you, right? Like that's not engineering yet. We thought at some point that I think the cycle went like this. We started on ChatGPT, and then we thought that it would just instantly get us. It didn't, turned out, and then then I needed to learn how to work with it. Now I'm prompt engineer. Not really. Like you just need to talk like better, like communicate better. Where the prompt engineering does start, right, is okay, people who develop GPT or Claude, right? That's where you actually need to, like, where you have validation sets, right? Like kind of controls. You need to like fine tune the model itself. And those people, that the real prompt engineering, they're not that easy to find. And the other thing that I've noticed is for what we saw, for example, in our own company is, the classical startup, right? There's the business guys or gals, obviously, and then there's the tech side, right? Developers and business people. In our company, we actually have like 3 sort of sides because the development splits into 2. There's the classical system building, and then there's the prompting. And that's not the same skill set, right? It's very similar, but it's a bit different, right? That, for example, to test the validity of question-answer pair on a resume, you need both the technical skills to set up the thing.
I don't think that many people realize that, and I hope, like maybe in your team, that's also could be a good addition, or you already have these people that. Actually, the proper prompt engineers could the best ones could actually be not people who know how to ask good questions, but are actually mathematicians and statisticians. Basically, what you can do quite easily, and I have some videos on that. Like if you know some model and you have rough estimation of what is the training data set, you can detect which are the tokens, the words, which trigger the best results, right? And then you systematically test them without any human thinking of how to write the prompt, just generate it.
Brute forced on the
basically
math, right?
Generate it and test it on your data set, and then the prompt might look nothing like human would write, but the model gives you good results. Basically, that's actually the proper prompt engineering.
That's like the much deeper level, right? Like what you're basically saying. This is the engineering proper, right? So
because how I look at language models are actually more like Google Translate rather than oracles. Basically, it's like a tool to convert it from human or maybe some one form into other. It's funny that they even called transformers, even though I don't think they originally thought it in that way. But in that process, it could actually convert the input into classes, actually, like the zero-shot classification as well. But this is not like just like simple human way. Anyway, so that's too deep. The other part is I asked you, and maybe you can give a comment on that from your experience, what you see in the industry. Which are these roles, professions, which can be automated by these AI tools? And this is where we go to also the AI Academy. Where do you see that already companies are not understanding that they are just throwing money in the toilet instead of they could just buy some simple tool and automate the whole profession there, right? Do you see something like that?
Yes, definitely in the US, for example, there's this rise of the AI SDR, right? Because what a sales development rep does, right, is find leads, qualify them, ideally write an individual sort of message that kind of converts, sends out this email, and ideally reads the response and schedules something on my calendar. And AI can do a lot of those things actually these days. Maybe, again, and there's this
it's like a prospecting, right?
It's a prospecting tool, right? And the same way for the sourcing in recruitment, it's a bit of a different take, but the steps are kind of the same.
Yes, I was wondering that. Can you automate the HR?
Not the entire HR, but like the tedious task of, again, data processing. What it means is finding, researching, or looking into every find, reaching out, and getting a yes, let's talk. That whole thing.
Okay, the prospecting as well, but what from your experience with HR, you did it personally, very into it. Like, what are the aspects you think are difficult to automate?
That human feel, right? It's like
You don't want to work with people.
we're not robots,
Right?
right?
That
So
that you have not have the correct connection, right?
exactly, because if it for the people to work together well, I still believe it has to feel right. You want hard data that this is somebody who's competent, who's great, who's their experience, and everything, but for better or worse, if the feel is not right, like it still might,
But
not
do
work
you
out.
need the separate HR department, as HR person for that, or let's say there is a department on developing some kind of for the oil and gas, like right, to doing some specific work with that, and then they need a new person there in the department. They just ask this AI agent to source this person, have an interview,
So
check
imagine, yeah. So
check
imagine
for the
this.
feel, and you don't need HR at all.
I wouldn't call that like I would say you need, let's say, the intern level stuff, right? The sourcing machine that brings a person to an interview, and it seems like there's like a potentially good fit, right? Let's say you're the hiring manager, I'm the HR, then we meet that person without having to do any work. So we just, instead of me going through like hundreds of people, we end up with like, oh, hey, here's whoever, right? Here's Peter, come in for an interview today. And then we can focus on that. And I think where AI can help further is we also have biases, right? So the feel might be right, but might be tricked by that feel. Oh, this person just talks a lot, maybe, and I'm not checking that there's no substance. So the AI could augment this and just say, hey, check yourself. But I don't think we're ready for, or at least there will be an AI, in the next couple of years where I'll be like, listen, just go on and hire people for me, and they'll show up at their desk. Like, I don't think we're ready to give up that control.
Yeah, giving up the control, also being like a human filter between probably also this, as you say, being able to decode maybe some deception and
Yep.
some other aspects which machines might miss maybe, but in general. Would you agree that HR departments could just consist of maybe few people basically nowadays?
I think, yeah, like these roles
Yeah.
that are kind of processing, administrative, and
Yeah.
so on, everything you could trust an intern, I think those will have to go.
Yeah.
And
Intern and assistant roles
yeah, I think
gone.
so. Yeah, or again, maybe for example with Hyperscan, like you would have one sourcer that's 5 times more efficient. So there's still somebody in there, right, to make a decision, but the data processing is done by the AI. So yeah, it will, like, I think the bottom and the simple roles will have to squeeze together, and the department itself will have to rise sort of mentally to be a good partner of like, what is the actual vision? What kind of a team do we want to build? What is the culture we're doing? Like, how do we position our company with everybody else?
But at
Like,
the same
so
time, you make it now seem to sound very high level. At the same time, a listener should not forget that AI will definitely find all of the requirements. So it will not be just talking about high concepts. You will have to prove that you fill all of the checkboxes,
yeah,
all of your
exactly.
questions. So only then the best will be asked these questions.
Yeah, and I also think that another good use case, for example, where we're seeing there's also a rise of the video AI interviewing tools.
Yep.
And it's an interesting idea. I talked to one of the founders of a company like this in Sweden. What she said, imagine if we could give an interview to everybody who applies. Because right now we are using resumes as a proxy to measure, like
You
as
don't
an
have
initial
time,
filter, right? Because we don't have time, right? I
Yeah.
cannot talk to everybody, but the AI can. And imagine in these cases where, let's say we're looking for a car mechanic, we're still having, like, we're forcing them to write resumes. Why the hell? Like, this person is not an expert in documents. So we're sometimes getting this kind of a thing like, oh, there's like a bit of a messy attitude. There's like a comma missing. Like, that's not the point, right?
I like
The
it.
point would be just give them a phone call and he can talk for 30 minutes about cars. And then the AI makes that assessment. It's like, oh, this person actually understands, right?
Yep.
So then we can give a sort of an interview to everybody, and that's actually like expanding our options, right?
So sounds that you already have another possible direction for Hyperscan in the future.
Perhaps
Maybe
we'll see.
we can also collaborate, because maybe, as you know, we worked for years with contact centers, and
Yeah.
we kind of can measure, you know, all of the emotional responses, lies, and like we could, you know, really automate that part, but we're not focusing on that business angle. But if you are like expert in that business angle, I totally agree that's something you could do, actually.
That's great, because in an interview you need both things, right? You need the factuals, so tell me about yourself, that kind of thing, where everything matches. Then you need to test for knowledge or experience, right? So tell me about let's say if you're a digital marketing specialist, like tell me about how would you build a strategy, right? Direct knowledge testing.
Definitely.
And then there's the third thing, what you guys are doing, right? Like, does this sound genuine? Like, are they confident? Can you get any personality sort of traits out of that? So, if you have those three components, then that's a kind of highly reliable result. I think.
What we do actually from these contact centers when they have the calls, we also do, as you say, structure every data that is happening in the calls.
Yeah.
So you would get all of these topics, conversation flows, and you can easily then select the best candidates. Yeah. So let's move to this last segment regarding the AI Academy. So here in the Europe where we are, maybe people even don't realize, because you talked about the GPT hype, right? That businesses are actually, at least in my experience, and that's why we're also doing these podcasts, are not as educated as so. What is your experience with working with businesses, and why did you actually started this AI Academy and what you do there?
Yeah, so the Academy is, as you said, it's basically a learning and development platform for businesses. And we do two things. We do open sessions or open courses together with the Riga Business School every 2 months.
Riga Business School,
yeah. Exactly, yeah. And the other one is, we do corporate trainings, right? And also... I think there are three parts for why we actually started to do this. One is, building Hyperscan, we have really gotten to know large language models. Like, it's our best friend now. So that's one, like the product itself. The second thing is our own operations. AI is everywhere now, from the chatbots, and I'm not saying, or AI assistants, not just ChatGPT, but also Claude, right? Those two also automated systems that do our own lead research and so on. So that's like, we've learned a lot on like business ops. And the third thing was my experience since last year, when I would start to share some of these insights about AI, I would always get a really good response. So different webinars, conferences, lots of questions. So you see that the interest is there, but from those questions you can gauge that where we are right now, in terms, as a small startup in this space, and where the companies are right now is quite of a big difference, right?
Yep.
But they want to be here. So we basically said, listen, I think this is a great opportunity. We basically started doing this. And our experience so far is, the interest is definitely there. I would say there's a curve, as always, right? There's a few companies that are very, very skeptical. There are some that actually are, as I would say, quite nimble. That are, we're already experimenting, building our prototypes.
We know already everything.
Yeah, well, not everything, but like, I see what you guys are doing. I think you're doing great, right?
Okay,
like the great middle is sort of, we're interested, but how do we even, where do you, as one person actually told me, is like, it seems that the train is moving fast. Where do I grab on, right? Like, I want to grab on. And that's the point of the Academy, is we want to help them grab on. Because, it's like right now, if you're not in the space, it might seem as this big, crushing, overwhelming like wave that's coming. But what we're trying to do is actually say, listen, in business operations, there are 6 main topics that most tools will fall into. And once you have your vision like that, it helps you structure things.
What are those?
So the way we see the world, right, and what we teach in the Academy is, imagine this, like there's the base foundation, there's the models, right? Then there are 3 ways to access those models. That's the chatbots, right? ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, and so on, Copilot. Direct way, right? Pretty much, but realize there's a layer, right? Then there are tools where that model is as like an electric motor, Like Hyperscan, right? You cannot chat with anything in our Hyperscan.
Okay, chat with Hyperscan.
You cannot chat with Hyperscan. He does a very specific
Did
thing.
anyone ever try to chat?
there's no, like, that's not the interface,
Okay.
right? And then the third thing is you want to maybe build your own automations, your own tools, and you just get to the server and get the response, right? So these are the first three. And then from that, you basically combine, like, there's chatbots, there's multimedia tools, there's custom chatbots, which is, I think, a very good, basically like RAG and so on.
Sure.
That whole method. There are these tools with inbuilt AI, again, just prompting some model. There's data, we call it data processing or data structuring. So AI in spreadsheets, which is a great use case, and automations with AI.
How do you do AI in spreadsheets?
Basically, like, there's either plugins or we built our custom formulas where you can send data directly to one of the servers and get like response.
Is it like Excel, Google Sheets?
Yeah, Google Sheets or Excel. Yeah, exactly. So,
you give some example what you can do with AI in spreadsheets.
Imagine, like, you've just done a survey, and as always, there's structured data and then there's like free responses. And we actually were part of a research project completely unrelated to anything else, but where the researchers said, we spent like considerable amount of time going, like, a person read every single thing in the free response, right? What you could do with if you integrate, let's say, GPT or Claude in there, you can take every cell, add a prompt instructions, what you want to get out, maybe categorize it, positive, negative, main theme, whatever, right? Drag down, and it's basically like, I just prompted something 1,000 times. And I get structured data, and I can work with that data then.
Yeah, this is one key thing. People, when I talk with some government enterprises, they still don't realize that Gen AI, which you're talking about, generative AI, right? It allows, in many cases, in these zero-shot scenarios where you don't need to have trained models, to do the unstructured data to structured data, because what they often tell me is, okay, first we need to structure our own data sets, make sure that we can make models, right, and things like that. But nowadays, it's actually that the AI can help to structure data.
Exactly, yeah. And that's another thing we keep repeating in the academy. Gen AI, or generative AI, made this whole boom happen. But we forget that before Gen AI, there was the structuring, the understanding, the context.
It has been done in that way for like tens of years. Yeah,
and these models are still very good at this.
Yeah, they are good.
We were kind of focusing like, how do I write blog posts?
They are better than Gen AI actually, but Gen AI helps to gap
more
this.
General, I would say.
It's basically, without it, it's very expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is, like, we're all kind of focused on, now I can write blog posts, but you can actually structure a lot of like random, reports or whatnot. So data in order, like, so that's what you get.
How much it costs and what is the process and who is the target audience for the academy?
Yeah, so we typically, so the open classes, that's like a 7-week, once per week, 3-hour class, so 20 hours in total, and there the price is 446 euros for the whole class, so 140 per session. For the custom trainings, we actually divided, for corporate ones, we divided them into 2 products. One is we call the starter pack, where we realized that a lot of companies, before they are ready to jump in on learning something, at first they want to actually understand what the hell's going on. So the starter pack is literally, what can you do with AI? Just showing lots of use cases, examples, sort of, it's a 6-hour course that we typically split into 2, going through these 6 sections plus a reasonable introduction, like that they understand that, the difference between ChatGPT and GPT, like what are we talking about? And then after that, we do like these, we call them like workshops or sessions that go, again, like what they want to do and implement. So
again, what were those 6 sessions, 6 sections?
Yeah, so intro, like what AI is and how it works on a basic level. Then there's AI assistants or ChatGPT and friends, right?
Okay.
Then there's the multimedia tools. So visuals. So basically text, like images, voice, video, music. like as a package, right? And those are also specific
Okay.
tools there. Then we have tools with inbuilt AI. It's a more nebulous section, but it's basically, if you're in marketing, there are specific tools in marketing, right? Then there's data processing, custom chatbots with RAG, and automations. No code automations.
Okay.
An
Okay.
interesting thing with automations, for example, is that, again, that thing has been around for a while, right? Like connecting different systems through APIs and automating your workflows. But a lot of like AI has, like, once you have these nodes in that can process cognitively, more or less, automations have exploded too. So it's kind of, again, like an old concept, but now people are like, oh, I didn't know you can even connect those systems. Like you always could have. But now you've thought of a use case where AI makes it possible. So you're kind of discovering a whole new way of doing work. So
Yeah. I see how this works. So towards the end, like you have these experiences in very different business fields, right? And some people already are, new entrepreneurs are thinking like, we have so much technology out there, right? Lots of things already have been discovered. There's no the moment like where you can just tinker around with some things, maybe, or is it like the prompt engineering that moment? Do you have some advice for new entrepreneurs coming into maybe field of AI or business or what?
yeah, the way I see the moment right now is almost like when I was in college. I think it was like freshman or sophomore year, where the first iPhone was released. And in a year, it wasn't immediate, but in a year, it just started a whole boom of, oh, wow, there's like weird apps and whatnot. And, everybody's like doing an app these days. And I was too young to catch on that, right? I think I was just a student. I feel now like, okay, this is at least that kind of a wave, if not something more. So the time is now. Like,
But
honestly.
then if you go back to that time, what would you do different? Would you jump on the app train? Would you do something?
Well, I'll be frank, right? Like, if I went back with my mind now,
Yep.
then yes, I could see how there will be a platform shift, right?
Yeah.
Like, but back then, that person that I was then, I couldn't really, I didn't have any tools or skills to actually make anything of it, other than just to be a user, right? So I think we're actually experiencing something like that now, and it could be even more major. So first one is don't miss it. If
don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Like you want to be on this train, in some capacity. And the second thing is actually tinkering does help. The best way that I've learned to do things or understand concepts is to actually build something even for fun, because it gives you a goal, and then you're like, okay, how do I solve this thing? And the good thing about AI is that the AI can help you learn AI. Which is the first thing in human history, right?
It was not like that with apps.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can have like almost like an assistant to help you get on this train.
It's like a recursive
Exactly.
function.
Yeah, it's like a logic, right? So, so don't be afraid and just
Yeah, so don't miss this. This is advice, right? So yeah, I remember this time, and the apps just came out, and they were thinking like, well, who will use apps? Like grandmothers will definitely not need apps. Now every grandmother have apps, right? So it's like there's an app for that. Remember?
Yeah, there's an app for that. Yeah.
Now there's a site. There's an AI for that already.
I know. I love that site, by the way. And similarly, like, we need to realize at the early stages. I mean, I think some guy made like $1 million making like an app that uses the accelerometer, where you like drink beer on your iPhone. A lot of stupid things will come up.
Yeah, initially, yeah.
We're gonna have the same thing now. Like,
I know the guy who there was this. I think the CNN or some kind of fragment where there was a guy who just ChatGPT came out. He left the high school, now made $1 million of generating books and selling it on Amazon. About like diets, which never ever heard anyone. So these stupid things still work, and there's good things also coming. So anyone needing very precise, specific professionals, go to Hyperscan. Want to learn things? Go to AI Academy. So thanks for joining
so
me
much.
today.
It was really great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, and all the best.
Thanks.
So thank you for joining this episode of AI Ranch. As a gratitude for our work here, please subscribe, like, share, and see you in the next episode.